I am a precious metals dealer. I buy and resell old gold frames, cutlery, and small antiques. After 15 years in this business, I can spot real gold plating from across a room. On a Saturday morning, I was walking my dog when I noticed tables set up in front of Mr. Riley's house. Mismatched chairs, old books, dishes, boxes of photographs. It looked like a quiet neighborhood yard sale, but something felt wrong. I had not seen Mr. Riley in months. He was a retired man, polite, always waving from his porch when he saw me pass by. But lately, his yard had been still. The curtains stayed drawn. The mailbox overflowed with uncollected letters. I should have kept walking. A woman I did not recognize stood behind the tables, maybe in her mid-40s, with short brown hair, wearing sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. She looked exhausted, like someone who had been awake for days, like someone waiting for something terrible to finally end. "Morning," I said. She only nodded. Did not smile, did not speak. I walked around the tables, scanning them out of habit. Most of it was junk, cracked mugs, stained tablecloths, old paperbacks with yellowed pages. Then, leaning against a stack of books, I saw something that got my attention. A long gold frame, old but still gleaming, real gold plating. I could tell by the weight when I picked it up. This was worth serious money. Inside the frame was a black and white photograph of a basement. A bare concrete floor. A single wooden chair sits in the center. Behind it, a narrow door was slightly open, revealing only darkness beyond. The photograph made me uneasy. "How much for this one?" I tapped the corner of the frame. She hesitated, looked at the frame like she was afraid of it, then back at me. $80. I handed her the cash without haggling. She wrapped it in a newspaper. As she gave it to me, she leaned in slightly and whispered, "It belongs with you." Her voice was wrong, too deep, too rough, like someone doing a bad impression of a woman. I should have asked what she meant. I should have given it back. But I did not care about that. I carried it home and set it against the wall in my apartment. I planned to clean it later, maybe polish the gold. It was a good find, worth more than I paid. That night, around midnight, my dog started growling. Low, uneasy. The kind of sound he only made when something was very wrong. When I walked into the hallway, the frame was glowing faintly, not bright, just enough to notice in the dark. And the photograph had changed. Someone was sitting in the wooden chair. Even through the grainy black and white, the face was unmistakable. It was Mr. Riley. My hands went cold. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I blinked and looked again, the chair was empty. The door was closed. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, that I was overtired, that the light was playing tricks on my emotions, but I knew what I saw. I was not drunk or something. Around 3 in the morning, I decided to check on the frame again. This time, I found the frame lying face down in the hallway. When I turned it over and looked at the photograph, it had changed again. The door was open wider now, and in the bottom corner, barely visible in the reflection of the concrete floor, was a figure, standing, watching. His outline, his build, his posture, it was Mr. Riley. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get rid of it. Breaking morning, I walked back to Mr. Riley's house. My hands were shaking the entire way. I needed answers. I needed to know what I had brought into my apartment. The yard was empty. No tables, no chairs, no boxes, nothing. A man in a moving truck was parked in the driveway, loading furniture. I asked him what happened to the yard sale. He looked at me confused. What yard sale? I had told him I had been there 2 days ago, that a woman was selling things. I bought a frame from her. He shook his head. The owner passed away months back. The house has been empty since May. We are just clearing it out now for the estate. My stomach dropped. The woman, the sale, the photographs, it had all happened 2 days ago. I had been there, I had spoken to her, I had paid her cash. Part of me already knew the truth. I just did not want to believe it. So I stood there, staring at the empty yard, trying to make sense of it. Then I turned and walked back to my apartment, barely able to stand. I knew I could not keep the frame in my home. My hands shook as I lifted it. I wrapped it carefully in heavy brown paper, tied it tight with twine, and sealed it in a box. I used extra tape. I did not want to see that photograph again. The next morning, I drove out of town to a freight vendor I knew, a place that shipped antiques and collectibles across the state. I handed the package over, paid for insured delivery, and watched as they loaded it onto a truck bound for another city. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. This morning, when I looked out my front window, I saw her, the woman from the yard sale, standing on my porch, wearing the same clothes, the same sunglasses. She was holding the frame. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering in my chest. This was not possible. I had shipped it hundreds of miles away. It was gone. And when she turned toward the window, I finally saw her face clearly through the glass. It was not a woman at all. It was Mr. Riley. A few months back, I went to a community yard sale after church. Rows of folding tables stretched across the parking lot. Neighbors stood around drinking coffee. Kids ran between piles of old clothes and boxes of toys. I was just passing time. At one table near the back, an elderly man stood behind a few boxes of books. Most were old paperbacks and hymnals with faded covers. But one caught my eye, a small, leather-bound Bible. It looked worn but cared for. The kind you might find left on a pew in an old southern church. The leather was soft, cracked at the edges, but still intact. I picked it up and asked how much he wanted for it. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Take it for $5. That book has been sitting too long." When I reached for my wallet, he shook his head and pushed it toward me and told me, "No, just take it." His tone stayed polite, but his eyes looked tired, almost relieved, like he had been waiting for someone to take it off his hands. Something about the way he looked at me felt wrong, but I took it anyway. I brought it home and left it on my nightstand. That evening, I opened it for the first time. The pages were yellowed with age. The text was clear. The binding was solid, except for one page. Near the middle of the Bible, a single page had been completely blackened. It was not pen or ink. It looked like tar, thick, glossy. The paper felt slightly sticky at the edges, like it was still wet, even though it had clearly dried long ago. My stomach turned the moment I touched it. At first, I thought it might be mold or oil damage, but the rest of the Bible was spotless. No smell, no moisture, no stains. Just that one dark page. I tried to turn past it, but my fingers came away smudged with black residue. I washed my hands and went to bed. That night, I woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of paper rustling, deliberately, like someone turning pages. When I sat up and looked at the nightstand, the Bible was open. On that same black page. I know I closed it before I went to sleep. I remember doing it. The next morning, I noticed black smudges on my fingertips, like soot. I scrubbed them off in the sink. Nothing explained it. By the 4th night, the smell of smoke woke me, faint but real. I sat up in bed and looked around. No fire, no candles, Just the smell, filling my room, getting stronger. The Bible sat open again on the nightstand, and the black page looked darker, almost wet, like fresh tar. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get rid of it. I wrapped it in a towel and carried it outside to the trash bin, threw it in, slammed the lid shut, went back inside and locked the door. The next morning, it was back on my nightstand. The towel was gone. My hands started shaking. This was not possible. I had thrown it away. I had watched it disappear into the trash. I drove back to the church parking lot where I had gotten it. When I got there, everything was empty, so I asked around the neighborhood, trying to find the old man or anyone who knew him. No one answered their doors. No one was outside. The street felt abandoned. That night, I called a friend from church who restores old religious books. I told him what was happening. He came over the next day and examined the Bible under a bright light. He ran his fingers over the black page and said, "This is not paint. It is burnt residue mixed with oil, like someone tried to seal over a burned passage." He adjusted the light and leaned closer. Through the thick layer of black, faint writing showed beneath. 3 words, barely visible, scratched into the page like someone had carved them with a fingernail. "He sold you for $5. I stared at those words. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. The old man, the tired look in his eyes, the way he pushed the Bible toward me without taking my money. He did not give it to me. He sold me. The relief on his face was not kindness. It was freedom. He had found someone to take his place. My friend looked at me and said, "You need to bury this. Do not burn it. The fire is what started this. Just bury it deep and leave it alone." I did exactly that. Drove out to the woods behind my house, dug a hole 3 feet deep, wrapped the Bible in plastic and buried it, covered it with dirt and rocks, marked the spot so I would never dig there again. Then I realized, some debts do not take money. They take pieces of you. It was last summer, August. I was driving through my neighborhood, windows up, AC blasting, just killing time on a Saturday afternoon. That was when I saw an old woman standing behind 2 folding tables in her driveway. A yard sale. Nothing unusual about that, except she was not calling out to anyone, was not waving, just standing there, staring, like she had been waiting for someone. I do not know why I pulled over. Something about the way she watched me felt wrong, but I did it anyway. Most of her stuff was garbage. Chipped plates, paperbacks with broken spines, a lamp with a torn shade. Nothing worth stopping for. But then I saw this mirror, tall, gold-framed, cracked at the top corner. The glass looked strange. It was not just reflecting light, it was absorbing it. I could not stop staring at it. The woman noticed. Then she stepped forward and said, "You can have it for $25. Her voice sounded dry, like she had not spoken in days, maybe weeks. And she said it before I even asked the price, like she already knew I would want it. Every instinct in my body was telling me to get back in my car and leave. But I did not listen. I pulled out my wallet, counted out $20. She took it without a word. Then she turned away before I even loaded the mirror into my back seat. I brought it home and leaned it against my hallway wall. My apartment was small, so I passed it constantly. Every time I walked by, I saw myself in the glass. That first night, something felt off. My reflection moved wrong. It lagged, just half a second too slow, like it was deciding whether or not to copy me. I stood there, staring at my own face, until it stopped feeling like my face. It felt like someone else, like Someone was watching me from inside the glass. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a sound. A tapping, slow, deliberate fingernails against glass. I got out of bed and walked into the hallway. The streetlight through my window cast just enough light to see the mirror. It was glowing faintly, like something behind the glass was generating its own light, and in the reflection, someone stood behind me. A woman. Every part of me wanted to turn around, but I could not move. I just stood there staring at her in the glass. Her face was pale, almost gray. Her eyes were dark and hollow, empty. Her mouth hung open slightly, like she was trying to speak, but no sound would come out. I finally forced myself to turn around. When I checked behind me, no one was there. The hallway was empty, silent, just me in the dark. I stood there breathing hard, my chest tight, my hands shaking. Then I had to look back at the mirror. She was still there. I now recognized her. The face, it was the woman who sold me the mirror at the yard sale. The next morning, I tried calling her. The number she had written on the receipt went straight to voicemail. So I texted her instead. Told her something was wrong with the mirror. Maybe she should take it back. I did not even want my money. I just wanted it gone from my apartment. She replied almost instantly, like she had a watch on me. You need to keep it. I stared at that message. My stomach dropped. Then another one came through. We could be one. That was the last thing she ever sent. I took the mirror outside that morning, laid it flat on the pavement, grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and smashed it. The glass shattered into dozens of pieces, sharp, glittering in the sunlight. I swept every shard into a box and threw it in the dumpster behind my building. I thought that would be the end of it. The next morning, it was back, standing against my hallway wall. Perfect, untouched, with just that little crack at the top edge. I could not breathe. I just stood there staring at it, my whole body shaking. This was not possible. I had destroyed it. Now, every time I walk past the mirror, she is there, the woman who sold it to me, but she does not look the same anymore. Her face is paler, her eyes are more hollow now, and her lips move like she is whispering something I cannot quite hear. I could not stay there after that. The next morning, I drove back to her house with the mirror in my back seat. When I got there, the tables were gone. The yard was empty. A for sale sign stood by the fence. I called the number on it. A realtor answered on the second ring. I asked about the woman who lived there. He paused. Then he said the owner had passed away months ago. That's months before I ever met her. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Part of me already knew the truth. I just did not want to believe it. But I managed to sell the mirror to a consignment shop downtown. The owner did not ask questions. I did not give him my contact information, and I did not ask for his. I do not know what happened to him after that. I do not want to know. I was driving home from work one evening when I saw a small yard sale on the corner of Maple Street. The sun was setting. A young couple stood by a folding table, talking quietly. Their little girl played near a blanket covered in toys, so I stopped because of her. The girl could not have been more than 6. She was quiet, holding a small brown teddy bear with one button eye and frayed stitching around the neck. Something about her looked familiar, though I could not place it. Like I had seen her face somewhere before, but could not remember where. As I looked over the toys, I noticed another bear sitting beside her, nearly identical to the one she held, only older. Its fur was darker, stiff with age. One of its eyes had been replaced with a cloudy marble that caught the light strangely. My daughter Maya loves old toys, so I asked the woman, "How much for the bear?" She hesitated, glanced at her husband, then back at me. "You mean that one?" When I nodded, the little girl stopped playing. Her hand gripped her own bear tighter. The mother smiled, but it looked wrong. $15. Something about the way they all looked at each other bothered me, like they were relieved I was taking it, like they had been waiting for someone to do exactly this. As I handed over the money, the little girl whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "She does not like new houses." Her mother shot her a sharp look, and the child went silent. I left thinking it was just one of those strange things kids say. That was my first mistake. That night, I gave the bear to Maya. She was thrilled, hugged it immediately and named it Maddie. My wife Sarah laughed and said it looked haunted. I joked back, "That is half the charm." The first night was normal. The second was not. Around midnight, Maya came into our room crying. She said the bear was talking to her, humming at first, then whispering, "Why not leave with me?" We calmed her down, told her it was just a dream, and we let her sleep between us. But I could not shake the feeling that we had made a terrible mistake. The next morning, the bear was sitting on Maya's chair in the corner of our room, facing our bed. I know I put it in her toy chest the night before. I remember doing it. I watched myself close the lid. Sarah and I stared at each other across the breakfast table. We both knew something was wrong with that bear. We just did not want to say it out loud. The following night, Maya refused to sleep in her room, so we let her stay with us again. But around 3 in the morning, I woke up to a soft thud, like something falling. Then came a faint humming that drifted from Maya's room, a slow, broken lullaby. My wife heard it too. We both sat up in bed, staring at each other in the dark. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to open that door, but I did it anyway. The room was empty except for the bear, sitting upright in the middle of the floor. And for just a second, I swear its head turned toward me. Just a fraction, just enough to make me doubt what I saw. My hands would not stop shaking. Breaking morning, we packed the bear in a box, taped it shut, wrapped it in another box for good measure. Sarah wanted to throw it away, but I insisted we return it. I needed answers. I needed to know what we had brought into our home.